Hello there. This is Alina in my channel Enough. And enough of lies, I guess. Enough of propaganda and everything. Just was very upsetting days for me these days, just because unfortunately I was right about Putin's regime. And I wish I were wrong. I wish my country Russia wouldn't be the aggressor. I wish the war in Ukraine wouldn't start, even in 2014. I wish all the people who dead will be alive now, and who died in that war. But I can't change it. I can't turn the clock back, unfortunately. It is very sad. I just deeply sad about that. Putin the other day announced mobilization in Russia, and again it was a lie, like always. He was saying it's a limited mobilization. It wasn't limited. Right now in the cities of Russia, people get grabbed and taken into the army. Even like I saw today, some gentleman from faraway region with 5 children. And if in the past there were laws in USSR and Russia that you can't draft people with certain disease, with certain problems, medical issues like flat feet, or how you call it, fallen arches, or something like that, right now it's not gonna stop anybody from taking you into the army and throw you in the battle as a cannon fodder. And all of it based on lies. USSR was based on lies. Russia was based on lies, a lot of lies. And these lies and Soviet propaganda which Putin brought, and for all the over 20 years in power, he was doing it. He was brainwashing Russians so bad that they believe that. He broke the social contract with Russians. That's where the Russian apathy about taking part in politics was coming from. First of all, he tried to brainwash them to believe that nothing can get changed. No matter what you do, you can't affect the government. Which every other normal democratic country proved that it's not true. The people did revolutions in the past. The people stand up against authorities in the past. The people right now, since I'm living in Canada, has several ways to tell the government that they displeased. They had several elections, which when they were displeased with one party and one prime minister, they choose another one. And nobody killing them for that. People can voice their opinion everywhere, in Canada, in the United States, in any other democratic countries. And I remember the times when Canadians were not happy. Some Canadians wasn't happy with Stephen Harper as our prime minister. There was elections, people elected different one. And now some people don't happy with Mr. Trudeau, and most likely next election they will voice their opinion and something will change. Or not, it depends what Canadians would want. But that propaganda, like a poison, was fed to Russians for years and years, that you can't change anything, you can't do anything. It was a social contract between Putin and people. You don't stick your nose into politics, you don't say anything against government, and you'll be fine. There would be no war, you will be fed, you will have limited freedoms, and you will have a job. Everything's gonna be fine. Now Putin broke that contract. Russian people has to go to war, which he started for absolutely no reason whatsoever. I've proven it in my other videos. There is whole playlists about that. Important to know about the war in Ukraine, for instance, where I've proven everything with facts. And yet, still there are trolls who believe, and not even trolls, there are even real people who believe that Putin is right, that there was something going on in Ukraine. After Bucha, after Irpin, after Izum, after the massacres and atrocities Russians did in Ukraine, they still believe that Russia is a liberator of any kind. God. I can't call it even stupid, because many of them are smart people in every other way. I call it a cult. It's like a religious cult with people stupidly following the leader blindly. That's what people in free countries have real hard thing to understand. How could you blindly follow the leader, but yet some of them doing exactly the same thing? My neighbors Americans elected orange clown Trump as their president, Putin's supporter and Putin's ally. I was disgusted to see how in some videos when he talking to Putin, he trusts Russian bloody dictator over his own country, over his own FBI or CIA, over his own police force. And it's not a problem to find those videos. One video I was just astonished. I lived in USSR and I lived in Russia. I saw that Mr. Trump acting like he's Russian propagandist who trying to defend USSR, a Soviet propagandist. He used exactly the same words, the same tactics, and he was defending Putin. Trump didn't have an issue to attack his fellows from leaders of free countries, leaders from NATO countries. He even dared to insult Canada and Canadian Prime Minister, and yet the only country he never insulted was Russia and Putin. And yet some American people wasn't educated enough, or wasn't smart enough, or wasn't good people enough to see through that corrupted, lying politician who just used the right words to stroke their ego, exactly like Putin stroking Russians' ego. You are a great country. Russia is great. Let's make Russia great again. Let's make USSR again. He taking it like biggest geopolitical catastrophe of the century, that the USSR, the evil empire who throw their own people who disagree with something in the psychiatric wards and fed them with psychiatric medications which used to treat schizophrenia and a whole bunch of serious psychiatric disease. Yet it's a catastrophe apparently. The country who's squashing rebellions in some countries like Czechoslovakia. Wow. After all these years, Putin tried to twist and falsify Russian history to make people believe in it, and they do. And today they're throwing in my face that, oh, we are so bad people and they need to bomb Canada. And that wasn't a troll, that was a real person who I know very closely. How stupid need to be and brainwashed to say something like that for a well-educated person with 2 university degrees who actually been in Canada. Unbelievable. I just can't believe that many people can be that brainwashed. But anyways, what is happening in Russia now? All those patriots who were so supporting Putin, amazingly supporting him, now running away. There are huge lines up on the border with Finland and other land borders with other countries. The tickets to other countries are sold out. I just today was astonished to know that one-way ticket from Russia to Armenia, a nearby country, cost 6,937 euros. One way, one passenger with luggage. Unbelievable. And yet, those so-called patriots who thought the war didn't come to their land, now scared and running away. Yet some other patriots who are real patriots of Russia went out on the streets. I wish they did it in 2014 when Crimea was taken. Not many of them did. I was against it, but I wasn't in Russia, so I couldn't come out on the streets, but I made a book about that. Not just about Crimea, about in general about Russia, which I said that I'm against occupation of Crimea because it's illegal by international law. And right after that, the rights of people who lived in Crimea, like Crimean Tatars, was stomped on, and they wasn't even allowed to have their majlis or like meeting. Originally, Crimea used to belong to Tatars, to Ottoman Empire, for centuries. And Russians still dare to believe that they had rights somehow to Crimea, to some parts of Donbass. They don't. None of it what's happening is Ukraine's fault or a fault of NATO. It's all a lie. And Putin's lie, like he lied about mobilization, that it would be limited. And right now, people who supported annexation of Crimea, people who supported murdering people in Donbass, murdering people in Ukraine by Russia, they're gonna end up on the front. The war is already lost. Putin broke his social agreement with Russians. He created a war, a bloody war. And now Russian people are dying there as much as more than Ukrainians. Over 55,000 people dead, just Russians. Logistics ruined. There is no equipment to fight this war. There are no people to train these soldiers because they were in the war and they were killed already. So it's a massacre of Russian people coming up. I didn't want that to happen. That is why one of the reasons I was standing up against it for years. And especially after the full-scale invasion in February. We all need to know that type of stuff. People of the other countries learn on the experience of Russia. I beg you, learn on that. People who think in politics is not applicable to us, that there are smarter people above us who are supposed to decide something. This is when it starts. That is where it starts for Russians. If I will stop at least some of you from doing the same mistake, it's already my videos were not in vain. This is important. Because next, your children will be in the war. Next, some lunatic from Russia would fire rockets into Canada, into the United States, into some other countries because he cleaned into power, he lost the war, and he can't afford it because he will lose power and lose his life. I don't think he would use the nuclear weapons. It's an idle threat. He loves his life too much. And his properties in London and some other places, which, by the way, English people were tolerated. There was a whole video about, which was actually shown in UK, in the Parliament of UK, about that, when some journalists pretend to be Russian oligarchs was buying the elite real estate in London and telling basically out front to real estate agents that he's Russian oligarch and he stole the money from Russian people. And yeah, and English Parliament did something about that. English authorities did stuff about that. We all have to do that. Keep in mind that there are politicians in your countries who bought by Putin, like Marine Le Pen in France. It's a proven fact that she took in her campaign, political campaign, money from Russia. It was the loan, so-called loan from First Czech Bank, which now bankrupt. And it was millions of euros. Sometime I'll do a special video about that. That's why I won't talk too much about this. But keep in mind that some of you politicians were stupid enough or bribed enough to drag you where you are right now. Russian dictator for years was threatening Europe that he can turn off the gas. Yet your politicians didn't do nothing about that until now. So don't do that same mistake again. It was a big mistake, and some of them has to pay for it, like Mr. Schroeder. Even now, when the war in Ukraine was going on, he went to Russia and lied to journalists that he's there on vacation. His wife betrayed him, and they find out that he was meeting with Putin and stuff like that. German leader and leader of France keep talking to Putin. Keep thinking that you can please the dictator. I hope that it seems like they changed their mind recently. But keep in mind, Putin cannot be pleased. He will not stop, and you are next. Everything that stands between you and Putin is Ukraine. So smarten up, help Ukraine, and educate yourself. Please. Otherwise, you will end up where Russians are. Have a good day, and thank you for watching my video.